I made an Instagram story asking what kind of table tennis problems you have. And now with this video, it's time for me to try to solve them. And since I answer a lot of different questions in this video, some might be very interesting for you, while you don't care so much about some other of the questions. So I will write the times of every single advice in the description so you can check what's more interesting for you if you want. And we start out directly with problem number 1, how to counter-attack with backhand. And this is actually a really difficult shot. For many people it might be one of the hardest shots of table tennis. But I have 6 very simple advice that every one of these advice themselves are simple. And if you follow them, you will actually be so much better and so much more consistent with your backhand counterattack. Of course, the hard part is to put all these 6 advice together and make them at once. So we start out with advice number 1 for the backhand counterattack. And this is the most important one. If you don't follow this, you will never be consistent. At least that's my guess. And that's to wait for the ball to get really close to your racket before you accelerate. When you wait for the ball to get really close to the racket, you take away the risk of hitting the edge and you take away the risk of having bad timing. You just get the ball close and then you make your acceleration afterwards. Advice number 2 and 3 are very related, so we take them together. And it's to have the racket very high and to make the movement as forward as possible. And the reasons for this is that when your opponent attack, 1, you don't have time to go down with your racket, and 2, if you go down with your racket, you need to go up. And it's already topspin in the ball since your opponent is attacking, so you don't want to go upwards because your ball will fly out. Instead, you need to keep your racket high and go forward to make sure that the ball dive down to the opponent's side. Step 4 is also about giving yourself time enough to make your shot even if you are under pressure since your opponent is attacking. And it's to keep your movement very short. You don't have time for a big swing or something when your opponent is attacking against you. Only if you are, for example, very far from the table. But if you are like close to the table or 1 meter out, make sure to have your backhand counterattack with a short swing. And don't be worried that you will not get power enough, because that's not the problem at all. For the first, it's already speed and spin in the ball, so if you just attack it back slowly or shortly, you will get a lot of power back. And for the second, if you have good enough technique, you will create power even if your movement is short. Advice number 5, be relaxed and don't use too much power. It's a little bit the same as the last one, but please, you cannot use too much power in the backhand counterattack, because this shot is so powerful no matter what. If you just hit it, you will probably win the point, no matter if you go full power or just a little bit of power, but with the big difference that if you use too much power, you will miss it almost every time. And the 6th and last advice for today with the backhand counterattack is to have your elbow a bit forward from your body, because if you have it close to your body, your arm will work by itself, but if you have the elbow forward, it will create and make it possible for your body to work too automatically, so you can play your attack and use almost no power, but it will still be a powerful shot since it activates your arm and your body. We move on to question number 2, and this question is, what can I do to stop losing against worse players? And this is a question who is very relevant for all players, because is it really anything worse in table tennis than losing against an opponent you know that you normally should beat? And here we have my best advices for it. The first one is know your level on what kind of shots you can do and be really stable. If I know I can hit almost every forehand topspin if I use 80% power and topspin, while I maybe hit half of my backhand topspins, make sure to play as much forehand as possible when you play against the worst player, and make sure to not go over the limit of power and spin you can use and still being very stable. The same with your receives. Make sure to use receives that you are comfortable with and use it with the quality that you are comfortable with, because the main reason you lose against worse players is because you're not stable enough. So the main work here is made in the training hall. Make sure to practice your stable level so you can hit 100 forehand topspins in a row, for example, but raise the quality all the time and make sure that you can put more quality on the ball and still be as safe as before. The next advice is a mistake so many people do when they play against worse players, and it's that they are too predictable. Make sure to have variation in your game and think about having good placements, because when you play worse players, it's many people who sometimes think that they can just play it to their backhand in an easy direction all the time because it's not so strong opponent anyway, so you will not be punished. And here you are very, very wrong. Because if your opponent knows where the ball will come, of course he or her will be so much better than if they have no idea where the ball is going to come. Make sure to make your opponent get a little bit wrong to the balls and make sure that they are unsure on what you are going to make next. And the last advice on how to not lose against worse players is to know when you need to step up your game. As I told you before, I want you to know your limits and where you are stable and play with this tactic and the game as long as possible. And just because you make a few forehand topspins or backhand topspins and they make perfect counterattacks or something, I don't think you should leave this tactic. But if they played really, really good in several sets against you, it means that maybe for the day, this opponent is much stronger than you expected. And you need to know when you need to step up your game a little bit more. Maybe try new tactics, maybe play a little bit more power or a little bit more spin, or at least get the ball a bit lower. So know when it's your opponent that actually is stronger than you expected and step up your game. Question number 3 is, how do I adjust to different balls and venues? Because I struggle a lot with away matches. And this is a very, very good question that's very easy to forget about. And I have a few advice. Most of the times, if you are going to have a competition or away match, you can just ask what kind of ball they are going to use. And if you have the possibility, make sure to practice with it a few times before in your home club. With the venue, because different table tennis halls can sometimes be faster or slower, for example, or the ball can bounce a little bit different. And this is, of course, harder to prepare for. But what you can do is to see if you can practice in the hall before. Most of the time it's not possible, but if it is, why don't take the opportunity? But otherwise, make sure to warm up as much as possible before your match, so you give yourself as much time as possible to adjust for the new balls and for the new venue. And my last advice here is that sometimes you can have big problem with the timing. At least me, for example, in my backhand first attack, with some balls or some halls, I feel like I hit it every time. And sometimes I come to a new place and the balls maybe bounce a little bit higher or a little bit faster, and it's a big risk that I hit the edge of my racket. So to make sure to not have bad timing with the new balls, wait for the ball extra. If you start to realize, okay, I hit my edge or I have bad timing so often today, make sure to really wait for the ball to get close to you to make your acceleration, because then you have time to let the ball come too close to you and you take away the risk to hit the edge. You take away the risk to have bad timing by just making sure that the ball is really, really close to your racket before you accelerate. Question number 4 is from a player that struggled to hit several shots in a row. So it has nice, maybe first 1-2 attacks, but then when it comes to shot 3, lose the consistency. And here, my first advices are to 1, don't have too big swings, and 2, don't use too much power. Because if you come in the situation where you miss shot 3 or 4, it's probably because you don't give yourself the right time to come correct to the next ball. So you use too much power, so you are not fast enough to play the next shot, or you have a too long swing, so you don't have time to come correct to the next ball. And things to practice to improve and be better on ball 3 or 4 is One, your footwork. Make sure to be as fast as possible so you can come correct to the ball as many times in a row as possible. Because the second you stand a little bit more wrong to the ball, the risk of you missing increase a lot. And the second thing is to improve your game to switch between backhand and forehand. For example, practice exercises like you can start simple, one backhand, one forehand, and then you can increase it harder and harder, and for example practice that you get ball free all over the table and you should attack it no matter where it comes. And here it's very important with things like moving your feet so you always stand correct to every ball, have the racket in front of you between the shots, so you're not ready for, for example, only playing forehand and then you miss your backhand, but be ready for everything and really improve and practice so you come correct to every shot. Next question, how do I make a service that's impossible to take? And here it's one serious and one a little bit less serious answer. And we start with the serious one. I would say that every serve has the same amount of potential. It doesn't matter if you do the hook serve, the tomahawk serve, the pendulum, the reverse pendulum. You can take all of these different serve to the same heights. And the question then is to how to reach these heights. And then it's some things you need. First of all, you need to be able to place the ball in many different directions, and you need to have a movement so your opponent can't see where you're going to place the ball until the really last moment. The second thing is that you need to be able to variate your spin, and you need to have a movement. For example, that you make the same movement but different kind of spins. So it's very, very hard for your opponent to see what kind of spins you're doing, and they don't know where the ball will come. The little less serious answer here is that there is actually one serve that's almost impossible to take. And that's if you make the ghost serve, but when the ball bounces over the net pretty low and bounce close to the net on your opponent's side and then directly into the net again. So it's no time or place for your opponent to really receive the ball. Okay, next question. I am a backhand player and I struggle a lot that my opponents play me in the middle all the time. Okay, so first of all, if you are a backhand player, my first advice is to change your start position you have between every shot so you stand like more in the middle of the table. Many players that prefer to play forehand, for example, have a start position where they are ready for taking their forehand in the middle, maybe a little even part of the backhand square and all of the forehand. But I think you, as a backhand player, should move so you take the backhand in the middle points and maybe also a bit into the forehand square. The second advice I have here is to practice your one-step footwork. Since you are standing in the middle, you don't have a super far way to go, neither for the shots to come in your forehand or to your backhand. So if you are right-handed, for example, have the weight on your toes to be as ready as possible for the ball will come. And if it comes deep to your backhand, take one step with only your left foot out to stand correctly to the ball. And if it comes to your forehand, do the same. You take one step out with your right foot to just be ready and take the ball early. The last advice I have here for you as a backhand player is to really practice your forehand shot to be down the line. If you master this shot, you will make it very, very difficult for your opponents to hit the balls to your forehand and even to the middle. And here it's very, very important with placement, because if your ball goes to the middle of the square on your opponent, it's not so hard for them to give you a hard placement. But if you master to get it really, really close to the sideline, you most likely will get the ball back diagonal to your backhand. The next question is something that suits me very well. How to attack backhand with short pimples on topspin. And here we have a few points that's extremely, extremely important. The first one is your racket angle. Since the short pimples don't have the same grip as normal inverted rubbers, you need to have a very open racket angle to be sure that the ball don't go down. Second of all, you don't want to have a loose wrist. Instead, you need to be stable with your shot and get the movement straight forward or a little bit upwards, especially if the ball is a little bit lower, to make sure it goes over the net. Because the wrist is made to create spin, something you are completely uninterested to create on topspin balls if you play with short pimples. And the next advice is what's the most important when you play with short pimples. Try to take the ball directly on the bounce, because the truth is that you are not able to create so much power yourself with the short pimples. If you go out a bit from the table and start attacking with it, your opponent will feel they have so much time, especially because your ball will not get topspin that kick fastly on the other side. Instead, it's a dead ball that will stop a bit. So if you play a shot from a bit far from the table, it doesn't need to be so far. If you just back out a little bit, you make it so much easier for your opponent. But if you, every shot you make sure to try to take the ball as early as possible. You will always make your opponent to get under high time pressure. This, together with the little underspin effect you create if you make a straight shot with your pimples, makes it so hard to play against. And the last advice here is to don't have a too long movement, because if you want to take the ball directly on the bounce, you need to make sure to have a quite short movement. Maximum you go from a little bit in front of your belly and then end up around with this distance from it, because you just want to make sure to have time and be fast to be able to play with this playing style. We stay on the subject with short pimples, but now it's more about the best ways to learn to play against the short pimples. And the first one is how to just attack against it over and over again. And here I think you should take a little step back to get time to come correct to the ball all the time, to be able to handle the little backspin come against you. Then you need a little more racket angle than you're used with, because otherwise the ball goes a little bit downwards compared to how it goes when you play against inverted players. Make sure to wait for the ball to always be close to your racket when you're going to attack it, because then it's you taking over the initiative. You take over the ball's spin and everything, and not so sensitive for the spin who is already in it. Be relaxed and make sure to have spin in every shot you make. The spin is important both because you want to be the one in control, but also to create a bow all the time, which is important since it might be a bit backspin in the ball. And the second way to play against it is to really take advantage of the biggest negative side of short pimples. And by doing this, you will push a lot of long balls and you will make a lot of long serves and force the short pimple player to make a first attack with the short pimples. If you have good quality in your pushes or serves, they will be forced to play upwards because it's a too difficult ball to smash on. And when the short pimple players play upwards, they don't get the same speed or spin as inverted players do. So you will get a very good ball to, for example, counter-attack on, or if you block it, make sure to block with some extra quality to make it really tough for the pimple player. Because here they have a big weakness, most of the players. Like me, for example, sometimes I get stuck in first attacking with too little quality, so my opponents can start every point with an advantage by counter-attacking or having an aggressive block. Next question, how to value the ball to take the right decisions. And the most important thing here is to know your own strengths and your own limits. For example, if you are very safe at some shots and worse at some shots, know what you can do. Know which shots you usually hit every time and know which ones there is a bigger risk that you miss. And try to all the time make the things you know you are good and safe at. That's the base. But then you need to also learn which balls, which shots works best against. For example, maybe I have an amazing banana flick, but it only works on some kind of spins or some kind of placements. For example, I might have an amazing backhand flip against pendulum serves in the middle or my forehand, but I'm not as strong as from the other distances when the balls come to my backhand. So learn to value that ball and take the decision that, okay, if the ball comes here when I know I'm very strong with the spins I'm strong against, I'm going to use this shot. While if the ball comes with another spin or with another placement, learn which shot you're better to use at this ball. It could also be, for example, when you self-serve, you know that I have a very good forehand attack after my hook serve, but my forehand attack is not as strong after my pendulum serve. Or for example, if I do my pendulum serve, I can attack with a lot of spin, while if I do my hook serve, I can attack with a lot of power. These examples doesn't mean it's the true examples for you now, it's just like you need to learn yourself and practice over and over and try out different things to know in which situations which kind of shot works the best for you. And the last thing here is relevant for most players, and that's if you come a little bit late to the ball, so you stand a bit wrong, or if you hit the ball when it's on the way down, make sure to put extra spin and bow on the ball. Because even if you are very good or think that, okay, my forehand is very good, if you stand a bit wrong or the ball is diving down, the risk of you missing this shot is so much bigger if you use your normal stroke. Instead, make sure to put some extra bow. While if you stand perfectly to the ball and it's maybe a bit higher, for example, in the height of the net, or of course a bit higher, you can use more power on it if it's your playing style. Some players should almost never use this power because they are not a part of their game, but normally if the ball is in the height of the net or a bit higher, you can go more forward, while if you're a bit late or it's diving, make sure to put bow. And the last question for today: how do I know which kind of racket, which kind of rubbers, which kind of blade I should use? And this question is very, very complex, and it is individual for every single player. So since it's so individual, I have decided to not answer this in this video. Instead, contact me on Instagram, you will find it in my description, and ask me for this help, because then I can ask you some personal questions and help you much better. If you like today's video concept, let me know with a like and a positive comment. And if you don't like it, I'm very happy to know about that too. So please comment why you don't like the concept of today's video.